Good morning and welcome back to the cabin. It's an overcast spring day and I thought it might be a really good morning to do the April garden tour. So this is the front garden. I'm going to take you around and show you all the plants, show you what's blooming now and what's to come. The front garden consists of 3 main beds, although it didn't start that way. It started out just grass with some bamboo. Not very cute. My goal here was to create a cottage style garden, very overgrown and flowy and loose, heavily planted in a purple, white, and silver color palette with some hints of blue. I also had a few other design objectives, including hiding that door right there that's on the front of the house but is not actually my front door. It was also really important to me to feature some sentimental things, like this windmill, which my grandfather built way back in the 50s. I also have some special plants in this garden that remind me specifically of people that I love. I think we'll start with this first bed. Here we have a silver euphorbia, purple and white tulips, Spanish bluebells. We are in the Pacific Northwest, so I've tried to add some specialty rhododendrons to this garden. This is one of them. It has beautiful white blooms, and as you can see, it's already setting its buds. The daffodils are more or less done for the season, but we have globe amaranth coming and Canterbury bells. These will bloom closer to Mother's Day in what I consider to be the second most beautiful flush of flowering this garden has all year long. We have a small amount of Spanish bluebells in this garden, but I have a feeling nature will take it upon herself to spread them around, which I'm perfectly fine with. Dusty Miller is one of the plants that brings the silver to this garden, as is lamb's ear. The lamb's ear was actually originally here. It was planted by the first owner and the builder of our cabin. I love the way it self-seeds and spreads and spills out over the pathways. It's a little bit hard to see, but here we have a rose of Sharon. This one has beautiful bluish purple blooms. Now it is quite young, but at some point it will get quite tall and put on a beautiful display here at the back of the bed. It was really important to me to add some botanical interest to this garden. I don't want it to be just all common plants. Not that I have anything against common plants. There's quite a few of them in this garden, to be certain. But this is really something special. This is an Edgeworthia. I planted it this spring and it will continue to get quite large. In the summertime, it leaves out a bit like a rhododendron, but the main show that it does every year is in late winter, February, when it sets these beautiful flowers and no leaves. The flowers, of course, are fading now that it is late April, but it'll set its leaves soon and fill in this bed quite nicely. One of the joys to come in this garden is the columbine. It is a love that was passed to me from a neighbor. These plants have been in the ground for about 3 years now. They're sprinkled all throughout the garden and they put on such a lovely show in that Mother's Day flush of blooms that I was talking about a moment ago. On this end of the bed we have a beautiful blue cedar. Next to it is a miniature limelight hydrangea. And then we have our barrels. The barrels are a brand new recent addition to the garden. I currently have dahlias planted in them that are waiting to sprout. I don't know about where you're from, but half barrels like that cost a lot where we're at. These were actually full wine barrels that we got for free and cut in half. So I'm very happy with them. Down here at the very front of this bed where you first enter the garden, you're greeted by some beautiful tulips. These are called Mount Tacoma, the white ones. A few primroses and a beautiful sphere-shaped boxwood. I will say my one regret about this particular flush of the garden is that I wish I had planted more tulips. I struggle a little bit with planting tulips in the fall because so much of this garden is herbaceous. But despite that, I'm definitely going to order a lot more and plant a lot more this fall. Now let's turn our attention to what I lovingly call the blue spruce bed. Of course, the star of the show here is this beautiful blue spruce. It was just planted last year, so I'm still having to give it quite a lot of attention and care. But the rest of the garden here in this bed is about 3 years old. So it's finally filling in and looking fabulous, except for the area where I'm standing now, which I've tried to keep mostly clear so that our beautiful tree has room to grow and expand. It will, of course, eventually fill up most of this bed, and I will be having to do some transplanting and moving things to other areas of the garden. Such is life. I intentionally planted the blue spruce to cover the view of the windmill as you enter the property, so that as you walk through the garden, the windmill reveals itself from around the blue spruce. Of course, the blue spruce is a little too small to fully cover the view of the windmill yet, but this perspective gives you a little bit of an idea of what the effect will be. Getting up close and personal, we still have a few daffodils blooming in this bed. They're holding on. Primroses, lamb's ear, and as we work our way this way, we have another of the ornamental rhododendrons. This one is about done blooming actually, but it's called Purple Gem, and I highly, highly recommend it. It'll stay quite compact, which I think is stunning compared to the rhododendrons of the 1970s that make me think of my parents' house. As we make our way around this bed, there is more columbine coming up that's going to greet you as you enter the garden. Lamb's ear and dusty miller sprinkled throughout, tulips in the back, and Canterbury bells that will bloom as well. On this side of the bed, I have a butterfly bush that has somewhat silvery leaves on it, perfect for this garden. I'm excited for it to grow up and sort of hang over the path a bit. In addition to the dusty miller and the lamb's ear, I have campanula, which has a bit more of a pinkish red tone than I'd like for this garden, but the silver foliage I just can't pass up. And it's a pretty prolific self-seeder, which in a cottage style garden is just perfect. To the right here, we have our Mount Tacoma tulips graciously greeting you as you walk down the opening of the garden path. And peeking out, just starting to emerge, are the hostas. For a while, I considered calling this garden the lavender garden. I have a particularly wild Spanish lavender here. I've toyed with cutting it back, but I think the wild nature suits a cottage garden. Plus, most of it gets covered when this Annabelle hydrangea comes into full bloom. She gets tall and spills over, and it blends pretty seamlessly with the rest of the wild lavender. I do have a blank spot to give the tree some room to grow, and this year I've actually planted it with some dahlias, so they'll get very nice and tall, stand up behind that Annabelle hydrangea, and add some of that beautiful purple color that I love in this garden. Last but not least, on the other side of the bed, opposite from the butterfly bush, I have a lilac bush, which of course adds a beautiful scent, balances out the bed quite lovely, and hits our purple theme. Now that of course leaves one final bed, and it is the big bed, which is still very much a work in progress. Out of all the beds, I'd say it's the one that's still overplanted, and that's because it has a number of really large shrubs that are presently quite small, but if I were to leave them all in and allow them all to get to full size, they would never all fit. So there's some editing in future, but I'll take you around, show you what they are, because they're all quite beautiful, and you might just want to add one to your garden. Here we have a lilac with some dusty miller in the background. Quite a few hostas will fill up this area. More dusty miller, grandfather's beautiful windmill. I'm so glad we were able to rescue that. Some primroses hanging on for dear life, some columbine. Here we have a blue cedar, which matches the one in the first bed that I showed you. There are some globe alliums in the back that are gonna pop open soon, and this is another of the limelight hydrangeas. This evergreen, the name escapes me at the moment, but it's planted center of the bed because it will be the tallest specimen in the garden at about 30 feet, which is the height of the house. So that'll be quite nice. Next to it is probably my favorite plant in the garden, to be honest. It's a camellia. It's called Camellia Winter's Snowman, and it blooms beautiful white blooms at a slightly obscure time. It actually blooms in November and December, and at that time of year, that's the only thing blooming in this garden, and it is just a stunning centerpiece that time of year. Next to the path here we have just a regular English lavender. It's had a trim this spring, but it will be absolutely stunning in just a few months' time. Behind we have a bridal wreath spirea. That's the little dainty white flowers you see there on that shrub. It's a beautiful shrub that I highly, highly recommend. This one's quite young, but it will get a decent size, and it sort of spills over upon itself in the most glorious way. Next to that, we have a small dogwood shrub. I chose this specifically because in the wintertime it has bright red stems, and I think it's just such a glorious look that time of year. This little tree here was the first one that I planted in this garden. I adore its little look. It'll only reach 10 feet. For now, I have it in this container, which I think makes a rather nice little centerpiece as you first enter the garden to focus on. Below here we have some tulips, some lady's mantle, which graciously spills out over the pathway, and some dahlias that will come in. Another ground cover, which I believe is in the oregano family, tulips, Dusty Miller, lamb's ear. At the far back of the bed we have this dogwood, which has just started to leaf out. It's looking stunning. It will get quite tall, and it was part of my mission of covering up that door from the view of the house at the front of the property. It's already doing its job beautifully. In the fall, it turns a slightly dusky pink color, the leaves that is, which is a bit unexpected for this garden, but I rather like it. Underneath the dogwood, there are more of the globe alliums, canterbury bells coming in, and of course this end of the path is flanked again by a pair of sphere-shaped boxwoods. Once you reach the end of the garden, the back half of the garden, you have arrived at what I call the shady walk. And that's because the house creates a lot of shade in this part of the garden. So the planting is just a little bit different, and I am still working on it, but I will give you a quick little tour of the shady walk. Some features of the shady walk include, of course, our pathway stones, which have gotten a little out of line since I first placed them, but I'm okay with it. I think it just adds a little more character. I also have more of my grandfather's planters that, again, he built in the 50s and were near his home. He always filled them with geraniums, so I of course have done the same. There are white geraniums in them this year, along with sweet potato vine and other dark accents, bacopa in a blue color that will spill over, and then the shining star of the shady walk are the fuchsia baskets, which seem to get a lot of comments from passerbys, which I'm perfectly okay with. I do think they add a lot to the front of the house, and the view from the street is quite lovely. As we enter the shady walk, we pass the silver euphorbia on our right. Of course, in the barrel there will be a stunning dahlia, and then we pass the little watering station, and you can see the containers freshly planted. I can't wait until they grow up and spill over. But if you look up all along the shady walk, you're greeted with this view of these fuchsias dangling overhead. It really is quite charming. Once you reach the back of the big bed, you are in the deepest shade part of the garden, and this still feels underplanted to me. It's still a work in progress. I'm trying to figure out how to really achieve the same look as the rest of the garden, colors and textures with slightly different plantings. I have lamb's ear here because it seems not picky at all. I'm trying out some ferns because they're quite friendly to deep shade. I did do a series of hellebores, and I'm considering just filling it with hellebores, but we'll see. I have found that the Brunnera is very, very happy here, and I think much, much more of this plant could be in order as we progress. Of course, the daffodils are done. They really filled up this back bed and the shade walk. They were a star just about 4 weeks ago. More ferns. And then as we arrive to the corner, a little bit of hosta. You can see some tulips that were there. A beautiful yellowish conifer will greet you. And of course, more silver and blue with the Spanish bluebells and the dusty miller. So that is the shade walk. So that is the front garden in late April. I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at all of the beautiful plants with me. Next time you see this garden, it will be about Mother's Day, which is mid-May, and you will see how much it has changed. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe and hit the bell to get notified of our next video.